Welcome to another edition of Lakeville City Council Wrap-Up. During this program, we will highlight the agenda items presented to the Lakeville City Council at their April 4th, 2016 meeting. First highlighted item on the agenda is item number 5A, Spotlight on Business. And to give the background information on this agenda item is Community and Economic Development Director Dave Olson.
Evening, Mayor, members of the Council. Spotlight on Business program is designed to recognize both new and existing commercial and industrial businesses in Lakeville. Program is also designed to emphasize for residents the important tax and employment opportunities that businesses and industries provide to our community. Tonight's spotlighted business, as the Mayor indicated, is Sonnet Montessori. Sonnet is owned and operated by Ann Thompson and opened its first school in Prior Lake in 2007 and operated and rented space for the first 3 years and later constructed its existing facility there in 2010. Sonnet's Prior Lake location currently serves 75 to 80 families. Sonnet opened their new Lakeville location at 19955 Idyllic Avenue on October 19th, 2015. I think there's some people here in that picture when that was occurring. Actually, that was a groundbreaking. Sonnet decided to open in Lakeville based on three main factors. There was no existing Montessori presence in Lakeville, a strong school district, which obviously we've all known for a long time, and the amount of residential development that was occurring in the community. Sonnet offers programs for children ranging in age from 16 months to 6 years old and has a capacity of 90 to 100 students. There will be an infant program starting in the fall, and the school currently has 20 children enrolled and attending and is growing rapidly. Sonnet teaches the Montessori method, which focuses on individualized learning and independence. There are 5 main categories in which instruction is given, which include language, mathematics, geography, sensorial and practical life. Sonnet will also be focusing on STEM based on curriculum starting in the fall of 16. Sonnet has an open house for prospective parents and students this Saturday, April 9th, from 9:30 to 12:30.
Next highlighted item on the agenda is item number 5D, Public Works Quarterly Report. And to provide the background information on this agenda item is Public Works Director Chris Petrie.
So we'll start on our first slide and provide some project updates. As the council is well aware, we haven't really kicked off all of the transportation projects quite yet, but we have had a number of projects that have continued on through the first quarter of 2016. And the first one being improvements to our water treatment facility. Again, to remind everyone, the improvements were made so that we could increase the capacity at the water treatment facility from being able to treat 20 million gallons a day to 26.5 million gallons a day. All parts of the project are substantially complete with the exception of just some of the restoration and grading work that needs to occur where the reservoir was installed behind the facility. But all the parts of the project, I wanted to mention them all so everyone can remember exactly what was done there. First, not only expansion of the reservoir, like I mentioned, that was a 1 million gallon expansion of the reservoir. We did install 700 horsepower, very large motor, high service pump, and that is in your upper left-hand corner photo on the screen. That's what pumps the water from that reservoir out into our distribution system. We also installed an additional backwash pump. That's not in the photo here. It's in that same room that large blue pump is in, but that's what allows us to clean the filters in the plant. We also did install an additional high service pump blower. That's in the photo on the far right-hand side of the screen. Everything that has to do with cleaning the iron and manganese removal filters is done by this backwash pump and ultimately the blower that aerates the filters to clean them out. We expanded the chlorine feed system. That's the picture on the bottom left. Of course, with treating more water at the water treatment facility, we needed to be able to use more chemicals. And lastly, you see the photo on the right, kind of upper right of some of the black equipment in the tank. That is changes to our fluoride system. So all in all, quite a number of changes at the facility that will position us very well for the next 8 to 10 years to be able to provide quality, safe drinking water to all of our utility customers. Again, the project was completed on time and below cost. now associated with our utility system as well, our Holyoke Avenue Water Tower, which is just up the road. You've seen a lot of activity there over the last few months. Specifically, the construction of the 2 million gallon tank. That's where all the water will be, and that is, you can see in the photos there, you can see some of the photos with the welders erecting the tank. So all the metal fabrication, with the exception of a couple of minor panels, has been completed. The next steps over about the next month will be some site work and grading, and then once the weather temps hold and the ambient air temp is such that the coating system will adhere properly, the painting contractor will then move in and begin painting both the interior and exterior at grade, meaning the level that it's at right now. And that should take about 6 to 8 weeks. And then come June or early July, that's when the actual tank will be hoisted on top of the shaft. That only takes about a day. It'll be raised up, and then it'll be secured at the top. The remaining portion of the roof will be installed. Interior piping will be done, some final painting will be completed, and then it will be online by this fall. We also have, again, tying it back to our utility system, specifically our water system, well 20. This is at Cherry View Park. And the well itself, as the council's aware, was drilled and installed in 2015. Then, of course, the winter came. But already this spring, we've put in the pitless adapter. That's what you see in the front part of the slide with the green on top of it. That's actually the well pump and everything. That's the well casing, as well as the remaining pipe work was done to connect to our well collection pipe. Really all we're waiting on now is for the ground to dry up a little bit, and then we'll be in pouring all of the concrete slabs and doing all the site work, setting the control panels, and ultimately getting that well up and running by later this spring. Of course, we have to mention snow and ice control. Hopefully we are done for the year, but during the first quarter, while we didn't have a ton of snow and we saw some above average seasonal temps, we still were out quite a bit. In all, our orange trucks and our orange fleet traveled over 24,500 miles in the first quarter of 2016, applied about 1,700 tons of de-icing chemical, and that means that we were out. Not only did we put on 24,500 miles, but we plowed about 5,200 miles of city streets. This has also meant about 2,700 hours of labor by our operators to perform these operations. Of course, the main benefit that we saw this winter, and it's evident by some of the photos with some of the warmer than typical temperatures, we were able to maintain a lot of bare pavement throughout the community for a good part of the winter, which I would defer to the police department, but I believe reduced the number of wintertime accidents that we typically see. So, based on the lack of snow and the warmer than typical temperatures, we were able to get out a little earlier than normal for spring street sweeping. Typically, we don't start until April. We were able to start in early March. Of course, crews mobilize and focus on areas that are around environmentally sensitive areas. That includes lakes, ponds, streams, and along also our collector roadways. Street sweeping is a best management practice that we need to adhere to through our requirements with the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES, as I'm sure you've heard staff refer to in the past. Complete sweeping of all of our streets, if we don't get interrupted by another snow event or something else, takes about 4 weeks. So we should be through with the first round of street sweeping here in the next week or two. And lastly, I'll finish up with a few slides on water use so far in the first quarter of 2016. Our first quarter through March, you can see we used about, and it's hard to see on the slide, but about 430 million gallons, which is about a 28% increase over the 10-year average. Of course, I've talked quite a bit already in this presentation about the weather, so this is indicative of the dry spring or dry winter into spring that we've experienced so far, as well as the warmer temperatures. Water use monthly, you see the same trends there month over month. And lastly, per capita water use or per person water use has hovered between 75 to 80 gallons per person per day, which is slightly higher than the 10-year average. It's not 28%, it runs along the lines of about 15%, but still slightly higher. And again, you see folks that they're out, they're washing their cars, some might be doing different things out around their property, and that kind of shows the trends that we've been seeing thus far in 2016. With that, that concludes our quarterly report for the Public Works Department. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Next highlighted item on the agenda is item number 7, public hearing to consider the vacation of street right-of-way located in the Lenahans Lot, Antlers Park plat. And to provide the background information on this agenda item is Assistant City Administrator Alan Kennan.
Thank you, Mayor, members of City Council. At the last meeting, we reviewed the first set of easements that were to be vacated as part of the Warwick property platting process. And just as a reminder, the city is purchasing the area shown in green that is adjacent to Antlers Park. And part of that purchase agreement is for the property owner, Mr. Warwick, to replat the rest of his property and vacate old existing easements that are no longer used or never built into roads. So at the last meeting, we vacated the first set. Tonight, we're looking at the second set. They're highlighted here in yellow, and this kind of shows them just a little bit closer view. Staff has reviewed the easement vacations and do find them acceptable and are recommending approval of the easement vacations. I'll stand for any questions.
Item number 7 was approved by the Lakeville City Council. Next highlighted item on the agenda is item number 8, consideration of an interim use permit to allow the keeping of domesticated wild foxes. And to provide the information on this agenda item is City Planner Darrell Morey.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. The request is for an interim use permit to allow the keeping of up to 3 foxes on the property that is shown on the screen. It's a 10-acre parcel that's zoned RA, which is Rural Agricultural District, and it's located south of 210th Street and west of I-35. The zoning ordinance section 35 currently has a provision that allows by interim use permit the keeping of animals that are not defined in ordinance as either house pets or farm animals. Foxes are not defined as either by our ordinance, and thus Ms. Raines has applied for an interim use permit to keep these animals. There are no specific performance standards as part of the IUP in section 35, but basically refers generally back to Chapter 5 of the ordinance, which is interim use permits, which then in turn refers back to Chapter 4, which is conditional use permits for basic general performance standards. The fox are housed in a kennel, and I know this may be a little bit challenging to see. This didn't print out the best. That's attached to a separate accessory garage structure. The house is located here. The garage is here, and the kennel is adjacent to the garage. So they are housed in the kennel. The garage, the kennel meet ordinance performance standards, so there's no issue there. The DNR has indicated, and I don't know if I have the exact nomenclature, they've informed Frank Dempsey that there's a permit that they issue. Whether it's a permit, whatever their approval process, they are waiting for city approval to allow the keeping of the animals. So it would be contingent upon City Council's approval of the interim use permit. Now, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on this request at their meeting on March 17th and recommended approval on a split vote of 3-2. There was public comment from 3 residents at that particular meeting. I know a couple of them are here in the audience today, and the other one you actually heard from at the last City Council meeting when this was not on that agenda for consideration. I would like to point out that the 2 Planning Commission members that voted no, which is consistent with the other interim use permit the City Council approved in the past 6 months for the Peregrine Falcons. voted no, not because they didn't support the request or that they had any doubt of Ms. Rain's ability to keep the foxes on this property, but they voted no more related to the process and the way the ordinance has the process set up by interim use permit without any specific performance standards. There was also some concern expressed by those two regarding enforcement of stipulations. As you recall, at the last city council meeting, you considered a number of amendments to the zoning ordinance, our annual zoning ordinance update. The Planning Commission had recommended the elimination of the interim use permit for the keeping of animals not defined as farm animals or house pets. The City Council did pull that off of consideration and referred it back to the Planning Commission, so we'll be having further discussions with the Planning Commission on this topic probably later in the construction season as time permits. So in summary, staff is recommending approval of the interim use permit subject to the 7 stipulations that are listed in the attached interim use permit for your consideration and adoption of the findings of fact. Just want to highlight a couple of those stipulations that, again, the applicant obtain the proper required approvals from the DNR, that there be a maximum of 3 fox kept on the property. That's what she has now. And that they be kept in a humane and sanitary condition, which we have with the current kennel situation. And then to point out that the interim use permit will terminate upon one of the following instances happening: that Ms. Raines no longer resides on the property, that she no longer has DNR approval to keep the fox, or if the keeping of fox on the property has been discontinued for more than 1 year. And I can stand for questions.
Item number 8 was approved by the Lakeville City Council. Well, those were the highlighted items presented to the council at their April 4th, 2016 meeting. If you have any questions or comments regarding these agenda items, please feel free to call City Hall. The number is 952-985-4400. Thanks for watching this edition of Lakeville City Council Wrap-Up.